The future of youth sport is
fun, inclusive, and transformative. And we're really looking forward to just bring some more of that Nike magic out into the world.
Vanessa Garcia-Brito is the purpose-driven VP of Impact at Nike, leading their global team committed to moving the world forward through the power of sport. 85% of kids are not moving enough, and these are the gaps Nike is trying to fill.
The statistics for kids are just really hard to grapple with. 85% kids are not getting the movement that they need. We know that girls drop out at a faster rate than boys, but just, I also want to recognize that the statistics for boys aren't good, and we're really focused on helping get all youth in.
And so this idea of sport needing to evolve for people today is something that I've felt strongly about for a long time now. I really started working on this in the youth sport space, broadening it to play and different types of movement, and that emphasizes the social and fun to match today's kids and people and the market's needs. But what are your thoughts?
I'm so excited that you're in this space, Claire, and that you're bringing attention to it. I don't know if it's best kept secret. And I agree with you in terms of that's the work that we need to do, is how do we expand the definition of play in sport so that everybody sees somewhere where they can connect in and join in on. I'd love for people to maybe consider that all of life is sport, and that we have all different types of movements can just be fun, which is something we spend a lot of time talking about as well. We want people to remember that play and sport, just moving your body, doesn't have to be a chore or a duty. It can be fun. We look to understand why aren't kids moving, right? At a place like Nike, is that we obsess the consumer and we're very attentive to the athlete voice. So if they're saying it, we're interested in hearing it. They want different options it might not be a competitive sport. For us, they're all our athletes, right? For us, athletes with an asterisk. If you have a body, you're an athlete. So they're certainly in that group. The role of a coach, representative coaches in any kid's life, at whatever age group they're in, is critical, right? One that I'm hopeful and that I think if everyone chose to could be achievable today is, we believe there's a coach in every one of us. That's the biggest invitation of all, I think, is for people to consider who that coach is inside of them and what they might want to do with that power.
Before we start, thank you for all the DMs and great feedback on Kuul Conversations, which I love to hear, so keep it coming. And what would help us even more is if you choose to subscribe. It helps me to bring you more amazing guests and Kuul Conversations. Now let's dive into the episode. Vanessa, welcome to Kuul Conversations. How are you?
Oh, well, I'm so happy to be here with you, Claire. I've been really looking forward to this conversation for some time.
Me too. I am genuinely very excited for this conversation too, and especially knowing that we both share a background in track and field, I believe. You are quite the endurance powerhouse, and I think cross country was your speciality, right?
That's right. I think, Claire, you might be the more successful, perhaps, runner amongst us. But yes, I started out, cross country was the gateway into distance running, which I do love. But no one should confuse endurance with either grace or speed. I just want to put that out for everybody. I'm a very inclusive runner of all paces.
I love that. I love that. And it's something that I used to struggle with. I used to compete and participate on the cross country team, and I admired all my distance colleagues for their determination and their perseverance. It's quite the event, cross country, I have to say. And maybe we could start there. I'd just love to learn more about your own journey in sports and play and how that evolved.
Sure. And that is the best place to start with me, because it really was my introduction to running that has shaped so much of how I think and what I do, and just the discipline, all the wonderful benefits that come from it. And it also really closely ties into the work that we do here at Nike. So my journey in running began with a wonderful coach. He was also my biology teacher, and just like many young people out there, certainly in secondary and high school for us. you have a lot of energy. I definitely had very chaotic circumstances around me. And he, as a coach, just saw that maybe that energy could be put to good use out there, and introduced me to cross country. And it's been such a gift, a really lifelong gift. One, just immediately shifting how I thought about my identity. I had never thought about myself as a runner. It was not something that I looked
Right.
at and aspired to be. And in fact, when he first suggested it, I thought must be crazy. But also, with a sport like running, we often think about the physical aspects of it. But what I found particularly valuable was the introduction to my mind and energy body connection. And like
Right.
when
Yeah.
you're in that space, it just shifts so much internally before you even get to, you know, um, the other physical benefits from it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It is a huge gift and underrated, I think, in just how it makes us feel, isn't it? And
Mhm.
how it helps us process emotions and so many things. And how is that carried through your life to today, maybe in terms of your activity levels?
For sure. So, I didn't take on ultra running until much
Yeah.
later in life. In fact, I'm much newer to the longer distances, which I think is wonderful because not only are we here obsessed with our young athletes and introducing them into sport, but I'm personally really inspired by the thought of ageless athletes. I think my best times are ahead of me. I plan on medaling maybe in my 80s, perhaps 90s. I'm not taking
Love
that off
it.
the table. And I can feel the chemistry shifts in my brain, but
Mm.
also how I think about obstacles or challenges at work and daily life has also shifted. It's just really fantastic just how it helps not just with resilience but also problem solving, and enhances just your sense of what's possible.
Is the characteristics are translating into your work?
Absolutely. I think there's of first it's a lot of what we see with youth. I think the beautiful part is also that you continue to be connected to your inner child, right? There's this,
Right.
you still get an opportunity to play and to also define what that might look like for you. There are so many at different stages of our lives, winning can look different for us, but it also,
Right.
I like to think, automatically makes you a member of a community, right? So everybody,
Mm.
I think, has a desire to be seen and heard and to belong. It kind of automatically puts you into a group of people, right? A community of
Does.
individuals.
That's a really beautiful point, and it is interesting to think about how our early involvement in sports then shapes those lifelong habits, and how it changes and manifests and evolves over that time frame, in different ways. I'd love to go to sport and what we call sport today. And when people think of playing sport, we often immediately come front of mind. We think of skill and coordination, sporty people, like that community aspect, competition, winning, intensity, which is often left out a huge majority of people, that they don't feel belong. And I, even back as an athlete, I'd meet people, and what would strike me would be their belief that they didn't belong in sport.
Mhm.
Adults and parents maybe who would say, "Oh, I wish I could," or "I can't play sport. I'm not sporty," or "I'm no good." And invariably, it would come with a story about maybe their negative experiences as a kid in sport or PE. Maybe they didn't have that biology teacher or that coach. And my philosophy at the time in reply was to say, just move your body in any way that just brings a smile to your face. And so this idea of sport needing to evolve for people today is something that I've felt strongly about for a long time now. And I really started working on this in the youth sports space. Pre-COVID, I guess, at this point, so it could be more inclusive. And referring actually to what you're talking about there, about broadening it to play and different types of movement, and that emphasizes the social and fun. And I've written about that, about how we maybe need to universally broaden that definition to match today's kids and people and the market's needs. But what are your thoughts on, like, how we define sport maybe up until now?
Yeah, no, I'm so excited that you're in this space, Claire, and that you're bringing attention to it because it's, I think, one of the I don't know if it's best kept secret.
Yeah,
We certainly think about different types of movements also provide different types of building opportunities at different stages in life. Right? When we talk about play, which I think is for kids of all ages, right? Even straight into your adulthood and
absolutely.
beyond. But certainly in the early formative years for children, it's providing different benefits and skills, right? That how to play with others, how to interact, but also physical benefits in terms of how their bodies are growing and moving and coordination, and it has so many different aspects to that.
Right.
I agree with you in terms of like that's the work that we need to do is how do we expand the definition of play and sport so that everybody sees somewhere where they can connect in and join in on. I often think about life as sport.
Oh, I like that.
I think,
Yeah,
if you're getting up in the morning and you're either, getting kids to work or getting kids to school or getting ready yourself, or even, if you're a commuter
yeah,
and you're taking, I don't know, whatever, the subway, train, bus, driving, walking, any one of those involves an obstacle course, right? Like,
love
and
it. Yes.
coordination and weaving, and there are all sorts of the same types of movements that we might use in more conventional ideas
Yeah,
of what playing sport is. So
sure.
I don't. I'd love for people to maybe consider that all of life is sport and that we have all different types of movements that can really help us get through that in a more positive, more maybe healing if you need it, or challenging if you desire it. And I think that's the beauty of it as well, like that not only are there age specific play and sports and movement options, but also it's up to you in terms of to define what that goal might be, and the goal can just be fun, which is something we
Yes.
spend a lot of time talking about as well. We want people to remember that play and sport, just moving your body, doesn't have to be a chore or a duty. It can be
Right.
fun.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's forgotten. And I love the way you pointed to in adults as well. Play is for adults too. And just that enjoyment factor is absolutely huge. And what's really interesting is that if we look at Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, we're starting to see some interesting data showing that they have different expectations when it comes to sports and play. And more of them are not really identifying as avid sports fans. And, I imagine this is a key customer group for Nike and for sports good brands, building brand loyalty. How does that type of data shift your influence and approach when you're thinking about how to engage with kids and movement and play and making it fun?
Yes, one of the great things about doing this type of work at a place like Nike is that we obsess the consumer and we're very attentive to the athlete voice, something that we really
Right.
center into and consider into everything that we do. So if they're saying it, we're interested in hearing it, and we think that's a really important part about how we think about breaking down barriers, and also what type of program designs or different options to bring into the mix for them is based on their voices, what they're sharing with us. And like we hear they want different options that where it might not be a competitive sport. We also hear from some young people who are like, "Hey, I love competitive sport, but for sure, youth voice, and for us, they're all are athletes, right? We For
Yeah.
us, athletes with an asterisk. If you have a body, you're an athlete. So they're certainly in that group. And yeah, and hearing from them directly is super important to us.
I really love that, hearing what they have to say, because I often say kids vote with their feet. If they're not having fun or they're not enjoying something, they'll let you know pretty quickly, right? And so I think that's such a unique, and I say unique because it's not always that's put at the core and at the center. And I also equally love the inclusionary messaging around, if you have a body, you're an athlete, and for a lot of kids, I think, that's huge, because the implication of that is you can move and you can play, and that's for everybody. And it's something that haunted me when I began exploring children's experience of sports, and seeing like up to 2/3 really of 7 and 8 year olds actually not enjoying playing or not wanting to participate, whether that was in PE or sports, and maybe struggling to coordinate movements, or they were labeled not sporty or too big. And once you lose those kids, it's really hard to get them back. Not impossible, but it is hard to establish those positive habits later on. How do you think that we can move the needle? I suppose they're like a subgroup. The kids that want to participate in sport, we have a better idea of how to engage them. But how do we look at moving the needle for this emerging larger cohort of kids?
Sure. We've all seen the research and data, right? It's startling and really sad as well. 85% of kids are not getting the movement that they need. Overall, I think the statistics for kids are just really hard to grapple with, especially when we know how many benefits they get from it. The statistics for boys are not great either. We know that girls drop out at a faster rate than boys, but just I also want to recognize that the statistics for boys aren't good, and we're really focused on helping get all youth in. For all kids, going back to also the role of a coach, representative coaches in any kid's life at whatever age group they're in is critical, right? They need coaches that they see themselves in. We talk about you need to see her to be her in many contexts. Also true in this space for playing sport, both boys and girls, all youth who are moving need to see someone that is representative of them, that they can identify with, that they feel heard by. And so that's one of the areas that we're really zeroing in on.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because you're leading the space in that, and coaches, and as you referred to the research and the Aspen Institute, Sports Society has done a lot of research as well, supporting a lot of what you found, and that coaching piece is so critical, and sometimes a very key influential adult in that child's life. And I know you've done tremendous work in being able to move the needle on access to quality coaches and providing more coaches and quality resources and training. Could you maybe just talk a little bit about that, and how we can, and you talk about representative coaching and trauma-informed coaching, maybe if you were to touch on some of those areas. I know you've a lot in that in the area, but you're doing some incredible work there, and I just really like to be able to go unpack it a bit further.
Yeah, thanks for that, Claire. For starters, we're a brand that was founded on the relationship between an athlete and his coach, right? Bill Knight and Bill Bowerman. So we may be one example of how powerful the relationship of an athlete with their coach is. But we think a really pretty good example, right? Because over 50 years later, we have this amazing universe of employees and athletes and partners, organization, right? It's grown into being something so big, but it started out based on that relationship. So, just from just to I hope help people's minds also expand them around those possibilities, right? Just what a difference this positive relationship can have. And I think that's true. That can be true in anyone's life, depending what their particular dreams are, what they're trying to achieve and realize. So we're very our belief in that relationship is very strong, and so we've been focusing on what does it mean to be a good coach? What does quality coaching look like? And we've partnered. We're doing this work with many great organizations, and definitely not doing it alone. And I just want to thank all the experts and researchers and organizations who are out there doing just fantastic work. I also hope your listeners, Claire, take this away. They're an incredible group of people out there who are getting up every morning to change people's lives however they can. And that's really uplifting, and I think a reason to believe and stay in the work as well. And when it comes to the coaching experience, we're we our approach follows a somewhat similar process in every way. We look for to understand why aren't kids moving, right? What are the barriers that they're facing? Uh, the themes tend to be global. The nuance can be local, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
access is a big theme that might be programming, space. There may be cultural, societal barriers built into that. Um, Perception is another. We talked a little bit about
Mm,
that earlier in terms of like it's not fun, it's not for me, I'm not an athlete. Just how do we break down those barriers of understanding of what that means to be, whether it's for you or how it can be enjoyable. And then the other one is the culture of sport and play and movement. And we think the coach plays a really important role, particularly in that area, although obviously has can influence the other ones. And so we work with different organizations around helping to develop quality coaching that is inclusive, calling kids in,
okay.
where they're also considering what different needs particular communities, so girls, for example, what it is that they need as part of a design and programming,
Okay.
um, how to keep it fun, right? Listening. And there are definitely, principles like ensuring that there's choice, that instruction is clear and concise, that it's offering ways to build confidence, right? So that it is a building up experience for them. So, you know, that's a basis for how we're thinking about that space. And right now, we have been on a journey with the Coach the Dream Summit, really trying to ignite a revolution around the next chapter of coaching. And
Okay.
we've had a summit here at our world headquarters back in May that kicked it off. We've
Okay.
had some global stops along the way. So we had one in Paris against the backdrop of the Paralympics,
Okay.
which was amazing because the
Yeah.
theme around that particular summit was inclusion. How do we think about that holistically?
Okay.
And we really mean holistically, whether you're
Okay.
have a visible disability or an invisible
Okay.
disability, whether it's culture or background or uh, circumstances that may surround your home environment, trauma informed because
Brilliant.
if you've experienced some kind of trauma, and just connecting the dots around what's healthy stress and how to process that versus what becomes a highly traumatic crisis situation.
Right.
So that was really bringing in inclusion from
Wow.
as holistic a perspective as possible. We then had as Paris, handed the torch over to LA. We had a kickoff as on the road to LA 28 now. We had one of the summits in LA to commemorate that next I guess that next time frame, right? As we look ahead to that, which was fantastic. We, and around also bringing in thinking the role of the coach and how they can help uh, ignite and also uh, make it an enjoyable and feasible journey. Right? Some kids that might be get into a sport right now could be Olympians in 4 years. I mean, we know that there were some kids who watched the Paris Games and saw a sport maybe for the first time in their life and saw someone like them and fell in love, right? Or so we had that stop in LA, and then most recently, just 2 weeks ago, we were out in Tokyo for the Coach Dream Summit in Tokyo, which was fantastic because it was the first time that there's been a summit of this kind at this scale happening in Japan. And so that was pretty spectacular to see, to have a journey where we've seen coaches and organizations from all over the world coming together around a topic that really unites them and that they're super energized about. It's I you know I'm right now coming off a season of high hope.
And I'd love for you to share, for maybe people who aren't familiar with Coach the Dream Project, what's the vision of this when you think about where you're at right now and this momentum that's coming? And you alluded to LA 28. What's your vision for coaching and how we can move coaching forward, to all the goals and the ambitions that you have? What would that look like?
We have some. We're a pretty ambitious bunch here, Claire. So uh,
This
w-
is good. It
one
drives us forward.
one that I'm hopeful, and that I think if everyone chose to could be achievable today is, we believe there's a coach in every one of us, and that's the biggest invitation of all. I
Yeah.
think is for people to consider
Okay.
who that coach is inside of them and what
Yeah.
they might want to do with that power. And it might just be to coach yourself. You might be
Okay.
the first person that you try that out on. But certainly, we all have people in our lives, whether uh, young children, nieces, nephews.
Yeah.
We all have someone that we might be able to have such a positive impact on. Um, and so that's like the biggest overarching is an invitation for everyone to, you know, take a look and see, check out that coach inside of them. Uh, More specific to youth sport, it is around bringing in all of the things that we know will make the experience better for
Okay.
kids,
Okay.
and also ensuring that we're helping to close the gap around girls' participation. And as we've been talking about, a coach is really key to doing that. We want to ensure that the quality coaching piece doesn't get lost. That
Okay.
there's a coach in everyone, and volunteer coaches are. It's just fantastic how generous they are with their time and their effort and their commitment. But often, they don't get training in how to be a
Okay.
coach. And so we have created several resources around coaching, that are free and people can access and download. And we're certainly happy to share any links to those afterwards.
Great.
Um, but I think that's the other piece, that there is an understanding that quality coaching is real and that there are foundational ways to approach it, and that nobody has to do it alone. There are
Okay.
tools that can help and support coaches in that journey. Um, and then, the collective impact that we can have. One of the reasons that we've been having these summits is because we know that when people come together, magical things can happen. And we've seen it. We've seen a mix of people from all different backgrounds, experiences, life experiences, come together around a topic that they really, really care about, and
Right.
they're making such a huge difference. The network they're able to create, what they're able, they inspire each other, right?
Right.
Just by sharing what they're doing, but they also problem solve together.
Ah,
And the same, and we work with groups of people that are really attuned to their neighborhoods and their communities.
right.
One of I think the things that sets apart our partner network is how thoughtful they are and listening to what the youth and their communities are telling them, which is fantastic when you bring people together so they can see that there's so many common themes in the barriers, and also that they're not alone in trying to break them down, and more importantly, that these are problems that we can solve. Like, what we're up against, there are so many challenges in the world that are really, really hard. This one is solvable. We can actually do something about this.
And I love the way that you talk about that collective action piece, because sometimes, and the optimism of it is solvable, because sometimes when you have the problem and it's everybody's problem, but it's nobody's problem. And so I know that foundational to your approach at Nike is, that community partnerships, and you talk about it's, universality of the problem, but then there's a localization piece. And my understanding is that that's fundamental to your approach and being able to bring people together, but also to have sustained impact in communities, that community approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that, because we were talking about access just a little while ago, the theme around access is a consistent one around the
Right.
world.
Right.
But that might look different to you if you're in a city versus whether you might be in a less urban area, right? That
Right.
might
Right.
look differently whether the makeup of schools, right? Whether they have
Right.
playgrounds or not, whether they have places for movement or not, whether there's a park in your neighborhood. For example, we have some great relationships with recs and parks. And then we bring in, some of our other partners to help provide things like the trauma-informed coaching. Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport is one of those, is the organization that we work with. They were out in Tokyo with us and did a coach training specific to coaches in Tokyo, and for coaches in Tokyo who are going to be working with girls. So that's another example of how we partner.
That's incredible. And when we look to, you mentioned LA and the US model, one of the challenges that we have, and this is maybe a broader conversation that's picked up more recently, is youth sports becoming more commercialized, and that we are seeing a bigger shift in focus from actual participation to more performance. Do you think that I don't know, this commercialization of sports, which is inevitable, it's happening, like, are we doubling down on a sports culture then that prioritize winning over enjoyment? And in some ways, could that be negating some of the efforts that you're doing when you're focused on the participation side and getting more kids enjoying it and playing?
One of the important factors, I think, for all youth is choice.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So, and that comes up, I think, in a couple of different ways. The first one is to have the opportunity,
yeah,
right? So being
yeah.
able to, and to help also um, build in that desire for movement, right? And winning, we also, just and the same way we've talked about expanding the definition of playing sport, there's also expanding the definition of what winning looks like.
Okay.
Winning can look really different. I mean, it should look really different to everybody on their individual basis. I mean, sometimes just getting out and putting, that is a win.
Yep.
Celebrate that, right? We don't have to have identical visions of winning.
Right.
But I think so expanding like what that might feel like, but I do think that all of the elements about in terms of what makes a positive experience positive and enjoyable and wanting you to come back should be consistent, whether we're talking about commercial sports, elite sports, grassroots, or community.
And the challenge, I suppose, that they're referring to around commercialization and the pay for play model is that cost barrier that you've just talked about, in that the more we privatize and commercialize, it increases costs. And I know that the LA 84 Foundation had a play equity report recently and talking about these cost barriers. And so it is a little challenging around, we all want youth sports to grow and evolve. And in the short term, the cost barrier may be amplified even further through the commercialization. Do you think is there anything that we can do around that or to offset some of that, given that the participation numbers are the way they are, and we don't want them to go lower, but that it may be affected? It's kind of this balancing, juggling act. I don't know if there's even an answer here, but just any thoughts on that?
Based on the work that we do in many cities around the world, one of the things that I think that can be astonishing is how many organizations are available at no cost. So just at
Right.
the community level for kids to participate in. As an example, we have a program out in China called Boundless Girls. Um, it's fantastic. The initiative, I mean, the name alone is it's all about unlocking and creating opportunity and just really this limitless a world of possibilities and inviting girls in. We've, together with the China Youth Development Foundation, helped to bring in over 20,000 girls since 2019.
Wow.
And across 223 schools. And the bridging of that work also is made possible because university age students are volunteering to train as coaches for these girls, which
Wow.
is wonderful because that's probably who they're looking up to. So that here they have people who are representative of them, that are closer to them, that are also now creating this model of what a coach can be, and also being trained in how to provide quality coaching. There are probably more opportunities than there's awareness for. It's not the only. It's not. I don't think there's a one solution um, uh, to the challenge of combating
Yeah.
physical inactivity. But I do think that's important. Also, the work that's happening through the World Federation Sport and Goods Industry is, I think, really important as well, and representative of having to address opportunity at different levels, right? Though there's the work that we do as Nike, and the amazing work that our community partners are doing at that level, and there's collective on this end as well, right? It's
Right.
a
It
group
is.
of competitors who come together to discuss how do we get sport and play into the lives of more young people. um, I think is a part of addressing that too. I mean,
Yeah.
we're a highly competitive bunch,
Yeah.
and here we are competing against physical inactivity,
Yeah.
and we're in uh, uh, different spaces of that same spectrum of movement, but all working towards that same goal of just having more people enjoy it.
And that was pretty remarkable. And I know that you have a very central role in driving that, and within the World Federation of Sporting Goods Industry as members, for those who may not know, and the sporting goods brands, you've collectively, and it was a very important moment, I would say, and during the summer when the data came out, and when you collectively teamed up against this. Could you help people understand, like, what does this maybe concrete look like for the industry? Because I mean, it's very important, like you said, and maybe unprecedented, because you talk about the competitors. So it's just really phenomenal to see. And what could that look like in contributing to moving the needle?
Sure. We've been really fortunate to have been part of the physical activity committee that sits within the World Federation Sport and Good Industry for many years. I had the honor of chairing that committee several years ago, and many of my teammates have as well. And I share that because even though the most recent data came out this summer, this group of brands and companies have been coming together for years,
Wow.
right? And working and listening to hearing from organizations like the World Health Organization as one example, um, uh, and processing all of the data that's coming out in the space and trying to understand, like, what is the role of brands, what can we achieve together. Most recently, one of the things, what you saw from the summer is, we have platforms so we can help drive awareness.
Right.
Um, that data was shocking to many people, those who saw it, but not everybody is even
Right.
aware that this is happening.
Right.
And when they
Yeah.
find out, they are shocked. And again, what's hopeful about the situation is that this is something that we can solve, and awareness is certainly a key part of a key step in that direction. The other one is the new CEO president for WFSGI, Emma Zwiebler. has provided some really fantastic leadership as she's transitioned into the role, and has brought some great energy around this topic. We really appreciate all the work that she's doing to ensure that we keep a North Star and are tracking towards progress. So I think this is something that I hope others, as they learn about it, can feel is promising, because
Okay.
here, we are, we're definitely competitors. We're out there, all very sincerely assured that confident in the strength of our brands and the conversations we have with consumers. And here's the space where we also all know that that we can drive some real good progress together. And I think that's a great thing.
That is an incredible thing. And I know that Emma has talked about how, this is really integral to the bottom line for the industry. Has it shifted more to being integral to the bottom line and the business strategy?
Our purpose at Nike is to move the world forward through the power of sport. So I feel
Okay.
super lucky because
Yeah.
for a couple of different reasons. One, as an individual, my values and Nike's values in the space are aligned,
Yeah.
and doing this impact work at a company with that purpose means that we there, you can we can name it whatever we want,
Okay.
but it's one and the same, right? The only way that we
Yeah.
can move the world forward through the power of sport is if people are moving,
Yes.
right? Otherwise,
Yep.
we don't, right? The power isn't in the name, the area. The power is what the humans bring to it, right? Alone, there isn't it's hollow without all the
Right.
people in it. So so I think the reason that we're also able to bring so much of that into the world is because it's not new to Nike. Nike's been doing this for over
No.
50 years. But we're, as a brand, we're very much an aspirational brand. We believe in human potential and in big dreams, and we believe that people should have an opportunity to realize those.
Yeah.
So for us, it's all bundled together.
And it's beautifully put in your mission statement to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And even if we just look at your FY23 report, the numbers are phenomenal, Vanessa. I mean, it's just, it's one thing to say, that we'll move people through the power sport, but to actually do it in globally at scale. Maybe you could talk to just some of the numbers in terms of girls' participation and how much you're committed to it.
Thank you. Let me start by actually saying, like, giving thanks to actually all of our Nike teammates. Some of our most fantastic volunteers, and I think also representative of how integral this is to the brand, are our Nike community ambassadors. So we have store athletes. We call them our retail employees, our store athletes, who volunteer in their communities. And so they're Nike community ambassadors, and are bringing the joy of play and sport to local organizations, local children, many of them who they might have grown up with or are neighbors with, or might be the cousin or uncle, or right there.
Yeah.
It's really personal to them, and
That is
they
so
are the best of us. They are on the front lines of representing the power of sport quite accurately, actually. And we just couldn't do that work without any of them. And so every 5 years we set targets.
okay.
So right now we are about to be closing out our 2025 targets. We report on those on an annual basis in our impact report, and so that we can share, here's what's been achieved, and also here's what we've learned. One of those targets includes achieving 50% participation of girls in programming,
Wow.
in the work that we do in key cities and countries around the world. And so that's a really important process to put in place, because it allows us also to talk to so many of our partners, our entire ecosystem around why this matters, how do we achieve it together. And the good news is that we are staying true to that goal. And that is representative of over like 450,000 girls, right? Like the
Wow.
numbers, like what that can impact is huge.
It's huge.
We're right in the process of we're starting off the uh, the process for our next report, and so processing all of the information that we have, and we're hopeful that that number will even, that we'll be sharing in our next impact report, will even be greater than that.
From your perspective, as Nike's known for innovation and moving forward, and I know you're constantly evolving because you're listening to the athletes. What are you thinking about, or what might be next for you guys that you think is important to be looking at?
Right now, I think it will stay consistent is our focus on the future of youth sport. We think that that's really critical. We're now starting the thought process around what our next 5 years will be, and what are goals that we can set that are that represent that as a priority, but that will also build on the foundation that we've had. We're pretty excited about one of the partnerships that we announced not too long ago with Lego, and there are several big sports moments which I think always help to rally people and remind them about that sport can be unifying, that we can tap into joy and passion and togetherness in a really positive way, and they also help to rally youth and young people, around those times too. So those are other things that are on our mind.
I know girls in sport has been such a focus, and you really have led the way in championing that, and you've spoken to many of the efforts that you've done in that. So just want to commend that, because we are seeing women in sports a moment, if you like, but it's more than a moment, and hopefully it continues that upward trend. And I know you've talked a little bit about boys' participation, and we're seeing that on the downward trend. But are you optimistic around where we're going and the work that we're doing collectively as a whole?
Absolutely. And I think we know that these efforts work, and we see those positive effects. We know that young women and girls who have had those opportunities have been able to carry them into their lives beyond the being on the field or on the court or anything. We see as they bring them into their careers. We have all the statistics around women who get into the C-suite, right?
Yeah.
Over 90%, right? Claire, we have you. We have, as an example that yes, it does. It can work. I'm sure that it's played a role in how you think and what you go after. And
Absolutely, yeah, sure, for sure. Just like you, for sure. It's amazing how it shapes you and it informs you. And in some ways, a lot of my purpose has been in giving back. Sport has given me so much and taught me so much, and in so many ways, how I can give back, and help kids just enjoy moving and playing sport more and having fun. So for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we have to keep reminding people that kids who move are healthier, happier, and more
Right.
likely to succeed in life, and that's right.
Yeah.
And however that comes, they decide to shape that.
Exactly. And I'm reminded, you've mentioned it maybe twice, so and it's occurred to me twice, the word magic. And I know you've recently headlines, you've had a new CEO in, although he's not new to you because he's been there for a very long time. And Elliot Hill, I know you've recently said something along the lines about putting the athlete at the center, a lot of what you talked about, and showing them the magic that Nike does. Something I'm misquoting him here a little bit, but I imagine there's a bit of magic coming back, that now that he's back in, or what's that been like?
We're super excited. Like you said, Elliot, it's a welcome back, which is fantastic. We are, super. It was really wonderful to welcome him back, and we're really looking forward to just bring some more of that Nike magic out into the world.
It's exciting. If we could wrap up with a quick fire round, 5 short little questions. Sure, whatever comes to mind, a couple of words, sentence most, something like that. Are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
This is your sprinting time. Okay, here we go. Sport is.
Magical.
My favorite memory of playing or sport is.
Dancing with my mother and my sister Saturday mornings. That's how we would process the week. So depending on what kind of week we had, that would
Yeah,
inform the music selection. Teeny tiny place because we did not have grow up in a very large space. But wow, it's one of my favorite memory. It is my favorite memory of movement.
I can see it lights you up. That's gorgeous. That's lovely. Okay. When kids and parents see the swish, what do you want them to think or feel?
Ah, possibility. I want their hearts to fill up knowing that they can do this.
To create the future fans of movement and play and sport, all that we've talked about, the sports industry should pay attention to.
Girls,
Okay.
uh, inclusion, just really thinking about calling people in.
And then finally, the future of youth sport is.
Future of youth sport is fun, inclusive, and transformative.
On that note, that magical note of possibility and so much, Vanessa, thank you so much for your time to join me in this conversation. But really, just really thank you for your leadership in Nike, but in the World Federation, but just in moving the needle and trying to make the future of sport for kids, for everyone, for humans to move more and be more. And I do know that it's a personal mission for you in driving meaningful change, and that that's really visible and clear as you talk. So thank you for all that you're doing and you continue to do, and best of luck as you kind of move forward, and excited to see what the next 5-year plan and everything unfolds as we move towards LA28.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's really been just an absolute pleasure to be speaking with you. It was worth the wait. I've loved getting to know you some more, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing. Thank you for bringing these messages to others in the world. It's so important for us to stay in conversation and truly just invaluable. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And maybe one day we'll do a run and maybe I'll be able to keep up. And I say maybe very seriously, but with a smile, because ultra running is not my strength. But
You never know.